Good morning, Year 9, and welcome to Health and Social Care. Over the next 5 weeks, we are going to look at a couple of things. We are going to start with our first component, which is this one, component 1. And we're also going to look at some key terms, key phrases that you will need to have an understanding of over the next 2 years. If you look at this slide, you'll notice that there are 3 components here, and in the Health and Social Care course this is what we look at over the 2 years. We're going to start with this one, component 1, and you'll notice if you look at this that there are 2 parts to it. The first part is life stages and the second part is life events. And life stages just means our life, so our life from when we're born to when we die. And our stage is where we are at, so what age we are at. So the first thing that we're going to look at today is to understand what the life stages are. What we are going to look at over the next 5 weeks is to focus on these life stages, particularly looking at the first 2. Now, the second part of component 1 is life events. Now, we may well talk about some of these over the next 5 weeks, but we're going to focus particularly on that next year. Life events are the events that happen to us during our lives. So things such as starting school, learning to drive a car, and so on. You'll notice as well on here, I've mentioned the facts book. And in the facts book, there are some key questions each week. It might be an idea to pause this video just to have a read through the questions before you watch the rest of it, because all the questions or the answers to the questions we will talk through during the PowerPoint, so it might be an idea just to familiarise yourself with it. Also, in the facts book there are some additional suggestions, some extension activities. If you are able to do those as well, that'll be brilliant. There are 2 that I've put there for this week, which you will be useful for the next 5 weeks. One is a link to a revision guide, which looks at all the things we're going to look at this half term. And the second is a link to an electronic copy of the textbook we use in lessons. If you want the link directly, which might be easier, then please send me an email to lgerity@johnfernley.org and I'll email the link back to you, or the links back to you. Likewise, if there's anything you're uncertain about or unclear about, or any questions or anything, obviously just email me. Okay, so let's start. So the first thing, as I've said, that we need to have a very clear understanding of are the life stages. You'll notice that this is questions 1 and 2 on our key questions, and the first thing that we need to understand are, what are the life stages? There are 6 of them, and the first one is infancy, which is when we're born to the age of 2 years. You'll notice it's a very short space of time, 0 to 2 years, but lots and lots of changes happen during that time. It's a time of rapid growth. The second life stage is early childhood. Again, you'll notice, look, it's very short. It's only from the ages of 3 to 8. But again, this is a time of rapid physical growth and change. The third life stage is adolescence. Again, fairly short, from 9 to 18 years. Again, lots of changes take place. Now, these 3 life stages is where most physical growth happens. By the time we reach the age of 18, sometimes 20 for males, we have reached our maximum height. We have stopped growing. Now, over the next 5 weeks, we're really going to be talking about these 2 life stages. Okay. Fourth life stage is early adulthood, and what you'll notice now, look, is that it gets much broader. Early adulthood goes from the age of 19 to 45. That's pretty broad. But as you might expect, there's a big difference between the early part of early adulthood and the later part. This is also a time where lots of life events happen. So in early adulthood is a time where we might move out of home, for example. We might have our first job. We might learn to drive a car. We might get married. We might have children, and so on. Middle adulthood, again, is quite broad. It's 20 years. And in that time, again, lots of life events might happen. And the last one, later adulthood, age 65 plus. So you'll notice on your questions that questions 1 and 2 are asking you what the life stages are, and you will need to remember those. And question 2 are the ages of those life stages. Now, we've got a bit of a practice here, and you could pause this and you can have a look at it and test yourselves. So we've got 3 people here. What life stages are they in? So we've got Angie here, we've got Jake here, and we've got Jeff here. So you could pause that and just do a bit of a check and then restart it. And if you said that Angie's in later adulthood, Jake is in early childhood, and Jeff is in later adulthood, you are spot on. Next one, we've got 3 people here. We've got Maddie here, we've got Sarah in the middle, Angela here. Again, the same thing. You could pause it and just have a bit of a think. And again, if you said that Maddie is in infancy, Sarah is in middle adulthood, and Angela is in early adulthood, you are spot on. Now what you could do this week, just to test yourselves on this, when you're watching programs on TV, you can practice your life stages. So you can practice, you can say, oh, well, they're in such a life stage, and so on. Just so you get used to what the life stages are. So life stages is one of the key things that we need to have an understanding of. And a couple of key terms that go alongside that are these. Now, growth we've already talked about. Growth is one of our key terms. Growth means physical growth, an increase in physical size, and that generally happens in the first 3 life stages. Development is a bit different, because development means gaining new and more complex skills, abilities and emotions. So for example, learning how to ride a bike, or passing exams at school, or learning how to cook new meals, or learning how to drive a car, which might be either in adolescence or in early adulthood. Learning the skills to get a promotion at work, and so on and so on. Now this development happens through all of our life stages. Okay? We carry on learning all of the time. Now this one here, milestone or a norm. A milestone is what the majority of us can do at a particular age. So for example, learning to walk, learning to talk. Now, sometimes people do this at different stages or at different ages, and that is why it's classed as a milestone, because it's a milestone that people hit, but at different times. Okay. The norm means the sort of average age that this happens. So for example, the average age of learning to walk is by 18 months. But that doesn't mean that everybody learns to walk by 18 months. Sometimes people may, obviously infants may have underlying conditions or reasons why that is more tricky. And so therefore a milestone is it will happen. A norm is the average age that happens. Okay, the second key thing for today's lesson are understanding what PIES are, and this is question 3. Okay, on your question sheet. We will be talking about PIES for the next 2 years. So one of the key things is to really understand what PIES means. So PIES stands for physical. Physical is anything to do with our physical body. So that includes our physical growth and development, but actually can also mean things like diet, for example, or exercise, or illness, or disease. So anything that affects us physically. Intellectual is anything to do with the brain. So learning, language, memory, that kind of thing. Emotional is anything to do with our emotions. So how we handle our emotions, how our emotions develop. But also things like how confident we are, our self-esteem. And social is how we interact with other people. So how we make our friendships, our relationships, how we interact with people around us. Okay. If you need to pause the video at any point to go over this, please do. This is a really important one to make sure you understand, what they are. So maybe pause this video just for a second. Have a look at this and match them up. So match up the PIES with the explanation. Okay, so if we look at physical here, physical matches with this one. Physical is growth and other changes that happen to our body. Intellectual here is this one here, look. The development of our language, memory and thinking skills. Emotional development is this one, so large arrow up to here. The ability to cope with our feelings about ourselves and others and being able to manage emotions as well. And social development is being able to form friendships, relationships, but also learning to be independent and gaining independence. Well done. So this is just a summary of what we've looked at. Now I have put on here, if you can jot these down, if you have a folder or if you have a couple of sheets of paper, that'd be really handy, just be able to jot a few things down. Don't worry if you can't, but it might be useful just to jot a few things down, if particularly things that such as these that we're going to keep referring to. So if we look at how PIES work, or an example of PIES, if we look at adolescence, this is one example. You can probably think of other things to add to this. This is an example. So physically, hormonal changes, puberty and growth spurts. Intellectual, there's an increase in problem solving skills and understanding other people's viewpoints. There's lots of intellectual changes in adolescence. Emotional, becoming much more independent, and a change or development of self-image. Might be emotional changes because of hormonal changes in the body. And social, wanting to build relationships or spend more time with friends. Okay, so that's an example of how PIES is linked to the life stages. And as we go through this, we'll look at the PIES probably individually, but always remember that they link together. So physical always links to intellectual, or emotional always links to social, and so on. So we look at things as a whole. Another example, in early adulthood. In early adulthood, physically, we're at our maximum height, and by our early 20s, we're at the absolute peak of our physical fitness, strong bones and muscles. Intellectually, we might start a new job and be developing new skills there. Emotionally, generally our hormones are more balanced and so we feel a bit more settled, and socially might be in a relationship and may have different friendship groups. Okay, so this is just an example of how of PIES in each of the life stages. As I said to you, we're going to focus over the next few weeks looking at infancy and early childhood. So we will do exactly the same for both of those and think about the PIES, so the development in each of those. So this week, the key thing is to go through the key questions, and we will recap those at the start of next week. So please go through those and try to learn those off by heart, particularly the bit about life stages and PIES. If you are able to, have a look at the extension activities, and as I said at the start, email me if you need, if you want the link or the links. You can also practice looking at the life stages by watching some programs and guessing the life stages. Okay. And I will see you all next week. Any questions, any queries, anything you're not sure about, please email me. Okay, and have a good week. See you soon. Bye.